My husband Courtney had a car accident while at work, leading to over a month of hospitalization. Concerned for him as he couldn't move well, I visited him daily, bringing him fresh clothes and snacks. Then, one day, a male coworker of my husband came to me with a shocking revelation about the accident. After hearing it, I stopped visiting my hospitalized husband the next day. Soon after, I received a furious message from him demanding, "Come to the hospital now." My name is Vivian, a 40-year-old housewife. Courtney and I live with my in-laws as part of a multi-generational household. My in-laws run a diner that's been in the family for 3 generations, and I help out there. Since it's been around for 3 generations, the diner has a retro vibe. This is a hit, even with the younger crowd. Famous for its burgers, it's busy enough to have a lunchtime line, keeping us all on our toes. My in-laws, though blunt, are very straightforward, and we have an easy, say-what-you-mean relationship. They often express how grateful they are for my help with the family business. Courtney has no plans to take over the diner, focusing on his office job instead. This probably adds to their appreciation of my efforts. I work hard helping out at the diner, covering for my husband as well. I believe that's an important role for me as a wife. While this mindset might be considered outdated these days, luckily our kids have grown up and I have plenty of time.
My wish is for Vivian to take over the diner someday. It'd be a shame to end it with me.
My father-in-law often jokes, or maybe he's serious. Whenever he says this, I feel happy, thinking I must be a valuable asset to my in-laws. Moments like these make me glad to be part of this family. I would continue to live out my busy yet peaceful days in this household. I had been vaguely thinking that. Then, one day, my cell phone rang right after lunch service as I was taking a break. The call was from an unknown number. Hesitantly answering it, I found out it was from the local hospital. They told me that Courtney had had a traffic accident while at work and had been taken to the hospital. My hand trembled as I held the phone. My heartbeat accelerated, and cold sweat trickled down my forehead. After hanging up, I quickly informed my in-laws about the call and rushed to the hospital where my husband had been taken. We all arrived at the hospital with pale faces, anxious and worried, and hurried to my husband's room. Opening the door cautiously, I found my husband lying there, already treated.
"Oh, you all came. I'm sorry."
He spoke weakly as he noticed us, his body covered in fresh, painful-looking wounds. His life wasn't in danger, but he had fractured his right arm and leg. He'd be in the hospital for over a month, in pretty rough shape. It was a small mercy he hadn't hit his head. My husband told us he had crashed into a utility pole, trying to avoid a cat that suddenly darted into the road. My in-laws and I felt a wave of relief knowing he was okay. But despite this, my husband was visibly downcast.
"I wrecked a company car in the accident, and with a long hospital stay, I might be fired."
He sighed deeply. We didn't know what to say to lift his spirits. That's when my father-in-law chimed in.
"Don't worry about it. If you get fired, you can work at the diner. You know better than anyone how well our business is doing. We could always use more help."
Smiling, he patted my husband on the shoulder. My mother-in-law and I agreed, doing our best to encourage him. Sure, the company car was damaged, but there was no bodily injury to anyone else, and above all, my husband was safe. According to him, his co-passenger, a colleague, only suffered fractures and bruises. Getting fired seemed unlikely, and even if he did, we had the family business as a backup. He didn't need to be this down. Right now, healing should be his focus.
I should apologize to the company. I'll get in touch with them tomorrow.
As much as insurance would cover, ignoring the damaged car wasn't an option. Thinking it was my turn to act on my immobilized husband's behalf, I offered to contact the company. Contact might be necessary for the procedures related to the accident, but when I mentioned it, my husband stopped me firmly, saying there's no need to do such things.
No need for you, Vivian, to get involved. It'll just complicate things. I'll handle it all myself.
My husband says he will handle all dealings with the company and the police, and I shouldn't get involved at all. However, he's injured and not in a condition to manage things himself. I can't just pretend to be unaware of the situation. I told him that I intend to take action wherever I can, but he still insisted that I don't need to do anything.
Just stay out of it. We might even end up in court with the company, so don't do anything unnecessary,
he said, visibly annoyed. So, feeling unable to argue any further, I decided to let him handle it all. He closed his eyes, saying he was tired, and we left the hospital. From then on, while working at the diner, I'd visit him during any spare moment I had. But something started bothering me. My husband was acting strangely ever since his hospitalization. Was it stress from the injuries, or after effects from hitting his head during the accident? He seemed to get angry easily and lose his temper quickly. Doctors didn't find any brain abnormalities and said it was probably just stress from the accident. Indeed, it made sense that stress would build up in a long-term hospital stay without being able to move properly. It might be something unavoidable. But still, I couldn't help but be concerned about the change in him. When I'd bring him things he asked for or some fresh clothes, he would hurriedly send me away.
Go back to the diner. You don't want to keep them waiting. Don't worry about me, just go.
At first, he seemed concerned about inconveniencing the family business. But even when I'd arrange my schedule to visit him, he would still tell me to leave immediately. Even if I said it was okay and I had time, he would get grumpy, so I would just leave the items and go. This pattern continued. His attitude didn't change, and my visits to the hospital became increasingly depressing. He would ask me to bring him this or buy him that nearly every day. More than 3 weeks remained until his possible discharge, and the thought of this going on was exhausting. Then, one day during lunch service at the diner, one of my husband's coworkers, Powell, came in to talk to me. I had seen him many times as he frequently visited our restaurant. Powell, always friendly and smiling, greeted me, but this time he had a serious look on his face and said he needed to talk to me about my husband. Sensing this wasn't a casual matter, we agreed to meet at a nearby cafe after my lunch shift. When I arrived at the cafe, Powell was already waiting at a table towards the back. He pulls out a tablet as soon as I take a seat and hands it over to me. "What's this about?" I ask.
Just watch,
Powell says. He then plays a video saying,
"This is from the day your husband had the accident."
Speechless, I watch the video on the tablet. My husband is driving the car, flirting with a woman in the passenger seat. The two look way too intimate to be coworkers. To make it worse, the video has audio. The woman is telling my husband, "Hurry up and leave your wife." And my husband responds with a smile.
"I can't wait to leave that old-fashioned, country diner-like wife of mine to be with you."
He says terrible things about me and his own family. The two then discuss plans to get rid of me. The woman suggests making me initiate the divorce. I recognize her. The woman I frequently pass in the hospital corridor when I visit my husband. She always wears makeup, which stood out to me. She must also be in the same hospital, having been in the accident with my husband. So that's why he wanted me gone so quickly. Realizing this, my hands tremble with anger.
Are you okay?
Powell asks, to which I can't give a coherent answer. Powell then says the woman is a temp worker at my husband's company. There had been office rumors about them having an affair. A suspicious coworker suggested installing a recorder in the car they used for field work. Apparently, they found traces of infidelity in the company car, so they decided to record them as evidence. The video has also become a problem at their company. While Powell is telling me this, the video continues to play. Eventually, the woman playfully hugs my husband while he's driving, and the screen shakes violently before going dark. So that's when they hit the pole, not dodging a cat as he claimed. Powell and his colleagues decided it would be unfair for me not to know, so they shared the video as evidence of the affair. And Powell, who I've met before, was the one who brought it to me. Powell sighed.
We're still discussing what to do with your husband and the temp he was with.
Please don't hold back. I have no sympathy for them, I replied. And I have no plans on letting this slide. I thanked Powell, took the video evidence, and went home. About 2 weeks after hearing from Powell, I was about to go out during my break at the diner when my mother-in-law stopped me. Vivian, I hear you've been ignoring calls from my son. You haven't even visited the hospital. Where are you going every day during your break? She confronted me, clearly annoyed. Did my husband complain to his parents? Thinking this, I simply told her I was busy and tried to leave, but she grabbed my hand. Hold on, my son just called. I don't know what's going on, but at least talk to him. She handed me her cell phone. I took it and held it to my ear.
Why have you been ignoring my calls? It's tough over here without you.
My husband was complaining from the other end of the line. My mother-in-law was probably listening, looking at me with a displeased face. By now, my father-in-law had also arrived.
Don't you care about your injured husband? Your visits are the only thing I look forward to. I also need a change of clothes. I don't want to wear hospital gowns. Bring me some.
My husband spoke regardless of my silence. Listening, I responded with a single sentence. I absolutely despise of doing anything for you. Let's get a divorce. I hung up immediately after. For a moment, silence fell. Then both in-laws spoke up. Divorce? Just like that? Abandoning your injured husband is outrageous.
You won't take care of him when he might lose his job? That's cold-hearted.
My usually cordial in-laws were furious, calling me heartless. It was the first time they directed such anger at me, and I couldn't help but feel shaken. But I can't back down now. I took out my phone and handed it to my in-laws. Judge me after you watch this video. I pressed play on the footage of my husband's accident that I'd gotten from Powell. They looked at me skeptically, but reluctantly started watching. Soon, the color drained from their faces. By the end of the video, they were furious. The in-laws were showing an even stronger anger than before. But not at me. Their anger was directed at their son. This is why I'm divorcing him. I've been meeting with lawyers and real estate agents during my breaks lately. Sorry I didn't tell you earlier. Both of them apologized in return. Tears welled up in mother-in-law's eyes, and father-in-law wore a face mixed with frustration and anger.
Is Vivian really leaving us?
Father-in-law muttered softly. I can't stay here if I'm divorcing my husband. I explained I'm already looking for a new job and a new place. Both nodded, deeply apologetic. Meanwhile, both our phones were buzzing non-stop with calls from my husband. I answered and simply said, "We're getting a divorce," before hanging up. He must be panicking. Mother-in-law picked up his call next and simply said, We're taking her to the hospital now," and hung up. Father-in-law laid his hand gently on my confused shoulder and turned to mother-in-law.
"We're closing shop this afternoon. Let's go to the hospital. We'll make him take responsibility for betraying Vivian."
Mother-in-law nodded strongly in agreement. "I'll put a closed sign at the entrance right away," she exclaimed, running off. Could it be? Are they taking my side over their own son? I felt tears in my eyes. Though unplanned, the three of us headed to my husband's hospital. As soon as we entered the room, he yelled at me.
"You're divorcing me now. Are you out of your mind? You know how tough it's going to be for me even after I get discharged, right?"
My husband starts calling me a heartless woman. At that point, my father-in-law says,
"Enough,"
and hands me my phone. We then show my husband the same video that my in-laws had watched earlier.
"What? Why do you have this?"
My husband goes silent, and my father-in-law confronts him.
"Sorry for the low-grade diner, so what's the explanation for this?"
My father-in-law glares at him. After watching the video, my husband is visibly shaking. After a moment of silence, he mutters,
"No, this is, well, a misunderstanding."
"I'll go talk to the woman in the video then. She's in the next room, right?" As I say this, my husband breaks down.
"I'm sorry, please forgive me."
I hand him divorce papers. His face turns pale, but nobody cares. Even my in-laws say, "We're cutting ties with someone like you." My husband's face grows even paler. As for the settlement money, we'll discuss it with our lawyer later. Don't run away. Although, you can't run with your condition, can you? My immobilized husband can't escape. He just listens, utterly defeated. A few days later, I go back to my husband with the lawyer. We're going to demand a settlement.
"Taking money from an injured man, you're the worst."
My husband snaps after hearing from the lawyer. I guess that's all he can say now. Rather than getting angry, I pity him.
"The fact that you cheated and got injured, and then make your wife deal with it, makes you far worse,"
the lawyer tells him, leaving him speechless. In the end, my husband agrees to pay the settlements from the divorce assets and signs the divorce papers. Our divorce goes through smoothly, thanks to his inability to flee. Soon, both will face job termination and some kind of legal action for workplace affairs and accidents. As I leave the room, never to return, I hope he faces the consequences of his stupid actions. After the divorce, I move out of my in-laws' place, but continue working at their shop. It was their suggestion. It seems like my father-in-law is genuinely keen on me taking over the family business, and he assures me that this won't change even if I divorce my husband. So, I accepted the offer, and now I'm in the midst of learning the ropes from my father-in-law with a newfound enthusiasm. My kids are all for it, cheering me on. Meanwhile, my ex-husband showed up at my in-laws' place once after his discharge from the hospital. He was limping on his right leg and was promptly kicked out by my father-in-law. My kids have no intention of helping him, saying it's all on him. From what I've heard, my ex is living a lonely life in a small apartment he rented with the remainder of his share from the divorce settlement. Apparently, he's also been hit with a large financial demand from his company and is working around the clock to pay it off. Well, as long as he has a place to live and a job, there's nothing to worry about. My ex lost everything. His family, our children, and their support. But I can't find it in me to feel sorry for him. Not one bit.